Hey everyone, how you doing tonight? Welcome to the North Carolina Cryptid and Paranormal Project. Sorry for the delays. Me and my guests were having some technical difficulties getting the audio and a good signal, but everything is good now. So we are going to be having Todd Neiss on. He is a world-renowned Bigfoot researcher. You know, he retired staff sergeant from the Oregon Army National Guard. He was an Iraqi war veteran. 1993, his life changed when he had a first-hand encounter with a Sasquatch during a military operation training exercise, and ever since that happened, he's been gung ho Bigfoot researcher, checking seeing all about them and research and investigate, and then going around doing documentaries, trying to understand more about these creatures. So, without further ado, here's Mr. Todd. Welcome, Todd.
Hey, how you doing, Todd?
What's going on?
Well, technical issues be damned. Here we are. But thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. I'm pretty sure I've heard you a while back on Sasquatch Chronicles talking about one of your encounters from the military. Were you doing like bombing? Doing like drills with ammunition and like I would
explosives. So,
explosives, yes.
So, as a combat engineer, for those of you in your audience that aren't familiar with that MOS, our mission is mobility, counter mobility. So, what that entails is making sure our guys get through where they need to get through, and keeping the enemy from coming through places we don't want them to come through. So we use explosives primarily to take out minefields, for instance. And we don't have to take out the whole thing. We just need to blow a lane through it, and we also will put in minefields. We blow up bridges. We build bridges, et cetera, et cetera. Blow up roads, fix roads. The idea is that we pretty much are like traffic coordinators, if you will. So our job is has a lot to do with explosives. And so on that particular day that you referenced, April 3rd, 1993, we had some special access into some private timberland where they had a number of gravel quarries, and we would use those quarries in the middle of the mountains, in the middle of nowhere, to practice our trade. And so on this particular day, we had 3 sites that we had to blast at. And the first 2, we had cutting charges. We'd use plastic explosives, C4, to basically melt steel I-beams like butter, as if we were taking down a bridge. The second one was a mock minefield where we had a bunch of surface-laid anti-tank mines, again, not to take them all out, but just to blast a path through them. So we practiced that again with C4. And our last site, the third site, was a cratering charge where we would practice blowing a road in half, for instance, to deny the enemy the use of that particular ingress. And in that case, I think we had about 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate that we'd been soaking in diesel fuel for a couple hours. Yeah, good times, So we lit the fuses on that third and final site. And as you can imagine, our SOP, standard operating procedure, was to get into our vehicles and get the hell out of there. So that's what we did. We had 4 vehicles, 2 Humvees up front, Hummers, deuce and a half, 2.5 ton troop transport truck covered with, canvas, and troops in the back. And then the commander's Humvee in the very rear following up. So the concept was to get down to this, get far enough away from this blast so that we were safe, obviously, and then wait for the what we call the report or the explosion itself, and then go back and check our work. So we had gotten in the vehicles. I'm sitting in the second of the Humvee behind the driver, and it was really a nice day in April. So not a cloud in the sky. It was about 3:00 in the afternoon. So I had the window unzipped, and because I lived in that area and hunted that area quite extensively, I was just naturally drawn to looking for wildlife while we're coming down off this hillside and away from the explosion. And so, I'm looking for deer, elk, maybe a bear, cougar, who knows. But as we got around this corner, the second blast site came into direct view. And I'm looking down there and I see these three figures standing down there, these three dark figures, obviously standing on two legs. And the first thing that came to my mind is what the hell are those people doing down there? Because I mean, technically, they could have been within range of getting showered on with any sort of shrapnel or debris that might be coming off this explosion behind us. But I hardly got the thought through my head. It's like, what the hell are those people doing? And the more I looked, it's like, those aren't people.
Yeah.
And
what would you say that was about 100 yards, maybe, give or take? Or more than that?
Exactly. I'm glad you asked because this has come up before and I've always just guesstimated. But I actually decided to get on Google Earth and using the measuring tool, I was able to identify the road that we came across and the rock quarry. And it came up to be about 281 yards. Now, with that in mind, know that as Army soldiers, we train at shooting targets, and these targets are half human silhouettes at 300 meters.
Oh, yeah, 500 plus yards, easily.
Yeah, so I mean,
almost 1,000 yards.
No, not that far. But I mean, it's like 320 yards, but without optics, just iron sights. We shoot at these half human silhouettes. In this case, I had full silhouettes and something much larger than a human. So anyway, I'm looking at these things and I realize they're jet black and no clothing to be seen. And the backdrop is this kind of light concrete gray. The quarry actually was made up of basalt, which is like a light gray cement color anyway. So the stark black against this backdrop. Now, had they been standing with trees behind them, I probably never would have seen them.
Right.
They would have blended in pretty darn good. But I'm looking at these things. They look disproportionately taller, much taller than humans, bigger than humans all around. And again, they're standing on two legs and they're watching us. There's three of them standing abreast, if you will, like this. And the one in the middle, kind of like my fingers here, the one in the middle was about a head taller than the two on either side of it.
Right.
And I would estimate the one in the middle to be around 9 feet tall, which would make the other two to its left and right about 7.5 feet tall. But if that's not interesting enough, what was really interesting was that while that one in the middle, that the largest of the three, stood there pretty much like a statue, didn't really move. The two that flanked it to the left and right exhibited this swaying back and forth, left to right, rocking, if you will, shifting weight from one foot to the other, and in the process, these arms, which again disproportionately longer than human arms, they reached easily down to the knees. These long pendulous arms are swinging back and forth in front of their knees. Again, with that bigger one standing just statue still. But they did this the entire time I saw them, and it wasn't a matter of 3 seconds, 5 seconds, something ran across the road in front of me. I watched them for nearly a half a minute, about 25 seconds, I would estimate. And the entire time, these two just did this shifting back and forth, rocking, swaying, if you will. And I've come across numerous eyewitness encounters where that swaying thing was a part of the equation. And I've talked to primatologists. One in particular I can think of is Dr. Wolf-Henner Fehrenbach, who told me that this is a common trait with primates when they become agitated or disturbed or excited, that they will just kind of do this rocking back and forth thing. So anyway, after 25 seconds expired, we rounded the different corner. I lost sight of them, and I just kind of, I don't know, I just kind of collapsed back in my seat, and I'm trying to take this all in. I'm like, what the heck? I mean, it was a real epiphany, if you will. It's anytime you're faced with something that just stands against everything you've ever been told, or in this case, I guess everything you haven't been told, it really messes with your head. And I'm trying to decide okay, all those times I've been out there in that very same area, hunting, deer, elk, fishing, hiking, those things had to have been out there that whole time. And for me not to even be aware of it, that can almost freak me out more than anything else. It's like, holy crap, you know. So, but you know, I've got 100 questions swirling in my head, trying to figure out what do I do with this information I've seen, this encounter, you know, something that's scientifically, historically important information. And I got to a point where I think a lot of eyewitnesses come to. It's like there's really nowhere to go with this, and it kind of eats you alive, because it's like, what do I go? Police, Fish and Wildlife, Forest Service. You know, who's going to believe you? And more to the point, how can you prove it, right?
Exactly.
So, and then on the other side of the scale is, you know, wondering how this is going to impact your reputation. I mean, at this point now, I was in a traditional guard role, which means those of us in the guard, we have Monday through Friday 9 to 5 jobs, and we just, you know, we give up 1 weekend a month to train together and a couple weeks in the summer. At that point, I was not just a family man and a non-commissioned officer, but I was also a vice president of a shipping company in Portland. And, you know, I had to weigh this out a little bit. It's like, do I risk having my credibility questions, even my sanity, if, you know, questioned because of something that some 25 seconds I just experienced? And it was a difficult choice, but, you know, the more I thought about it, it was like, what's more important, Todd's reputation or the exposure of a species, you know, out there, as rare as they are. And so I got to a point where I decided, you know, I need to speak out about it. I want to, you know, the question that keeps coming up to me is, why me? I mean, if it were 10 minutes earlier or 10 minutes later, I probably wouldn't have seen them. I could have been having a conversation with the passenger on the other side, never would have seen it. But I did, and I can't unsee it. As much as sometimes I wish I could.
Now, did they have to call the blast off, or they proceeded with the
Well, you
blast?
can't call the blast off. We had 2 fuses. We always do dual prime, just to make sure it goes off. And these fuses were 11 minutes long. So you're not going to run back there and start stomping on fuses. You can't call the blast off. It's not, again. This is a physical time fuse. It's not like a remote detonation. So we didn't have that option. But just to follow through, because I think it's really important, is once we got, and we weren't very far. Once I lost sight of them, we weren't real far from where we got to this safety staging area. I just instinctively, when our Humvee came to a stop, I bailed out of the the vehicle and started jogging back up in the direction that we just come from, because I was really hoping I could still stay within sight of our company, and maybe get us another view of these creatures. But I got as far as I dared. You cannot leave, by protocol SOP. You cannot leave sight of the main party. But I went as far as I dared, and I'm on my tiptoes. And I got my hand on my head. I'm looking off into the distance, really hoping to get another view of these things. Unfortunately, I could not. But what happened next was pretty incredible, and that's that I heard somebody call my name, and I look off to my right, and here comes Sergeant Martin, and he says, "Hey, what are you looking at?" And I would shrug my shoulders. I have nothing. Drop my hand on my side, and he kept coming up to me. I remember he was smoking on a cigarette, and he walks up to me, and he gets right up to me and says, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at that second blast site." And I said, "I don't know, Jeff, what did you see?" And I remember he took a drag off his cigarette, and he looked left and right and make sure nobody was within earshot of us. And he said, "I saw 3 huge, hair-covered Bigfoot, I guess. I don't know. I guess it was Bigfoot." And I looked at him and I said, "Yeah, I saw him too." And so, I mean, it wasn't that I needed any corroboration. Again, I can't unsee what I saw, but it was kind of nice to know that somebody experienced the same thing I did. And so we share that bond. We're part of that exclusive club, I suppose. But
the Club of No Return, isn't that what Steve Isdall calls it? The Club of No Return.
Yeah, exactly, and that's fact. But just to wrap this whole encounter episode up, again, as a traditional guardsman, we trained 1 weekend a month. So it wouldn't be till the first week or so of May that we would reassemble and have our next drill. And interestingly enough, there were 2 more soldiers that, independent of each other, they came forward and said they saw the same thing. So we're, as sightings go,
altogether you had 4 soldiers. 4. And did they make you sign any non-disclosure agreement forms, in the higher ups? Because obviously they had to bring you to no one mentioned it. It kind of stayed silent within the ranks. Everything stayed there.
Oh yeah. Well, I did do one little taboo thing. Is I did draw. I remember I drew up this. I made up this little sign that said, "Bigfoot researcher looking for leads to any Bigfoot sighting," something, and I had my phone number. And I made 2 of those, and there were a number of bulletin boards around the armory, and I tacked it up on 2 of those bulletin boards, and I don't think they lasted more than about 15 minutes.
I was going to say, someone probably swiped them off, ripped them up, and they became either fire fuel, toilet paper, or went in the trash bins.
Well, I knew I was kind of taking a risk, and a lot of people asked me, did you have any concern about the military's perception of you going public about what you saw, and especially because it happened during a military exercise? And the answer is no. You have to understand, obviously, that was 93, and I just got out of the military 2.5 years ago. So over time, it's not been a real secret in the military. People know that this is something that is important to me. Our research and the founding of the Conservancy and all that it's pretty common knowledge, and people take it tongue in cheek. I didn't get a Section 8 discharge, so that's all good. But No, it is what it is. Free speech, you know.
Yeah, it's just weird that a lot of bases over the years, there's so many encounters. I've heard so many different podcasts with encounters, military bases, Fort Bragg, out west in Washington,
Fort
Texas,
Lewis,
Fort Worth, Fort Lewis. I mean, you name it,
absolutely.
all across the country. It seems like these bases seem to maybe they feel protected on these bases because they know that the military, keeps it guarded and whatnot. But I don't know.
Well, they call them military reserves for a reason. That they are very secluded and guarded. And it's funny you should mention that because I can tell you, like to say, I can't tell you how many times where I was stationed at Camp Radallia, which is on the Oregon coast, just north of Seaside. We would be at a training area having full fledged um, simulated warfare, having opposition forces, or Op 4 as we call them, coming after us. And of course, we're shooting blanks
I was
and
gonna say, hopefully
whatnot.
you're using dummy rounds and not the real stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'd have what back then, I'm dating myself now, but we had what they called the Miles system, and that it would actually shoot a laser beam based, when the rifle recoiled, it would shoot out a laser beam, and each soldier had little sensors on them, and it would set them off if you shot them, and they'd have to sit out, and they're like, oh, you're dead.
Almost like
But
you were playing high tech laser tag with military, you know,
yeah,
ammo
well,
rounds.
the stuff they have now is a lot more advanced. But I'll tell you, I never ceases to amaze me that we'd have a full on battle with not just M16s, but 30 caliber, 50 caliber grenade simulators, artillery simulators, and like 30 minutes after we're done, you know, we'd have. I mean, might even still be smoke lingering in the air. We'd have a whole herd of elk just come walking right through our training areas, like they weren't phased at all. But I think you're right. I think they know what's going on there, and they realize that it's safe, and the very few people get access to it. So that could be. But anyway, so that's my 1993 encounter, and lots gone on since.
Well, I mean, I know one thing that's went on. You were in a little expedition with Ron Moorhead, Tom Seawood, and a couple other investigators called Operation Sea Monkey
Yeah, that was
out in Alaska.
Yeah, and so, gosh, uh, in 2015, my wife and I we founded what's known as the American Primate Conservancy. And way back then, we had this color trifold brochure, if you will, that we would take out to different conferences that we spoke at, or what have you. And we had 4 different phases that we were planning to do over the course of, say, 20 years or whatever. And one of those phases was to take a vessel, in this particular case, a motor yacht. My wife and I lived aboard a 42-foot motor yacht for about 3.5 years in Portland on the Columbia River. And our intent was to take that out to the ocean, up to Canada, and spend the entire summer up there going through these different inlets
Right.
that would go into uncharted, uninhabited areas, and also inspect these different uninhabited islands.
Yeah, so you were going into these areas where not many people can get into and have access to. So you were having perfect access to like prime Bigfoot habitat areas out there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was that uh, would have been the first week in September of 2016. Tom Seawood and his girlfriend would come down to our house in Oregon, and they stayed here at what we call the Chateau de Squatch, and they spent the night. And Tom was looking through this brochure, and he saw what we intended to do, and he goes, "Brother, we got to go now."
Wow.
And I'm like, "What? No, what? No, this is when I retire.
Mhm.
Um, I'll have time to spend 3 or 4 months with our boat up there and do our thing. He goes, no, you got to go now. I go, what's this? What's the hurry? He said, well, right at the cusp of September going into October, he said, this is the shellfish tides. These are the times that for thousands of years my people have come out to these beaches. They'll canoe out to them and they will hit these certain beaches and collect cockles and mussels and clams. And not only do my people do this, but you'll find grizzly bear, black bear, wolf, and Bigfoot out there on these beaches digging up these clams. And I said, well, we got like 3 problems here, Tom. One is we don't have a boat. Not enough time for me. And basically I'm saying, I've got leave saved up in the military. I can go for a week, maybe 2, but I can't just disappear for like the 3 months that I planned on doing. But if we can pull something off, we don't have a boat, we don't have the money, we don't have a team. So Tom said, you let me worry about the boat. I know a lot of people in Campbell River, and I'll hook us up with the boat. You need to come up with a team, and then you need to come up with some money. And we had like 3 weeks to pull this whole thing together. And I said, all right, I'll see what I can do. So I did my very first GoFundMe, actually my last one, I believe. I'd only done it once. And I was amazed because when I put this team together, and you mentioned a few, Tom Seawood, Ron Moorhead, myself and Tom, and a couple others, Gunnar Monson from
Gunnar, yep.
Preacher X or Monster X.
Monster X Radio.
And he also makes the greatest coffee called Sasquatch Coffee.
Yeah.
So we put this team together. I told everybody, you better plan on bringing $500 or $600 because it's going to cost us for all this diesel fuel for this trawler, this, that, and food and all that stuff. Well, put on this GoFundMe, and I was really, really surprised that we were able to raise $7,000 in 3 weeks.
Nice.
And so I told the guys, I said, keep your wallet in your pocket for now. We've got enough money for groceries and fuel, and let's do this. So we did, and it was an amazing 6-day adventure. We went about 70 miles out of north of Campbell River on Vancouver Island. And there is what they call the Bronton Archipelago, and the Bronton Archipelago is about, easily 100 small islands, forested small islands that are uninhabited. They were inhabited by people at one time, and I should preface uninhabited by meaning people because they were heavily inhabited by black bear, grizzly bear, wolf, cougar, as we would come to find out.
All the prime predators out there,
In one case, the hard way, we can get into that. But anyway, so in 6 days, we would travel north again, some about 70 miles. We would anchor off shore with this 50-foot trawler, which was actually a very nicely fitted yacht. And we had 2 Zodiacs, motorized inflatables, and we would investigate these islands. And we would spend the day looking for evidence and then putting up game cameras and seismic ground sensors and microphones and different things to try to collect evidence. So I think we hit a total of 5 islands in 6 days. And it was a tremendous adventure. As far as I'm concerned, it was more of an exploratory expedition because, if I had my way, I would have been up there all summer. But we had to do this in a week, and it was a fantastic, I think, successful expedition in that we were able to establish that this is prime Bigfoot territory. We identified over 25 different sites that historically have encounters that happened there. In fact, if your listeners are interested, they can go to YouTube and just pull up, type in Operation Sea Monkey, and there's about a 4.5 minute trailer there, from a documentary we've been working on, and you'll be able to see some of the stuff that we saw and the things we experienced. But what we would do is we would take, each night, each of us would have a 2-hour shift, and we would be up on the top deck of the trawler and using a $25,000 pair of FLIR or thermal cameras that would measure body heat, or temperature differences. We would spend 2-hour shifts all night from some sunset to sun up, watching the beaches, because that's where Tom said if there's going to be any action, it's going to happen on the beach, because that's where obviously the clams are. We had a number of very interesting things happen. Suffice to say, we didn't get the Holy Grail that we had hoped for, but it was a good test run for what we hope to do here in the next year or two, and that's to spend an entire summer up there and going into these inlets that go, in some cases, 80, 90 miles into the interior and completely uninhabited. But it was a good trial run. We worked our tails off and had a great team together, and it was fun, but it was a lot of work, and we look forward to pressing on with that.
That's nice. I was going to ask you a question about your. I know Tom Seawood belongs to the Quacky Walk tribe out in Vancouver. I'm hoping I said it right, because I followed him a lot on Wes Germer's Sasquatch Chronicles, which you were on too, because I started my little Canadian excursion happened in Canada, and I talked to Wes about it. Back in 2016, he put me on his show, on his little podcast, and that's how I kind of got out and started. But he let's see, the Sasquatch that they have out in his area, they call it the Juniqua, the wild woman of the woods, and she comes around with a satchel on her back to steal children.
So there's
what I remember. That's what he called.
I have to commend you on your pronunciation. I think it took me a whole week to figure out Quacky Walk, but yeah. So there's Juniqua, and then there's Aquas, which is the male version. And Tom's done some amazing artwork in that regard. But his people have had. In fact, one of the islands we visited was called Village Island, and we were able to go into this abandoned Indian village. I mean, you would have thought it was something at a National Geographic that had been, a ruin, if you will, for hundreds of years, but it had really only been abandoned for maybe 50, 60 years. Tom remembered actually growing up there, and there's some houses still there. There's some abandoned fruit orchards out there, which Tom said you can tell when the Bukwas is in there, because all the lower fruit gets picked by the bears and the deer. But when you see the fruit, the pears, apples, plums picked, 12, 15 feet up, it's not a bear.
And now bear can't reach 15 feet up, or apples, or any kind of fruits on trees, or even when you see these trees get debarked, these 13 to 24 foot round diameter trees, and the bark's missing from 15 to 20 feet up, and it's like people can't get up there and do that. I mean, I could see maybe some kind of mountain lion, but that would be a little section missing, not a 4-foot section where there's no bark whatsoever. I mean, something is going up that tree, pulling the bark off it, and either eating it or removing it to get something in the hollowed out tree, like the grubs.
That's exactly. And that's there. You made a good point, because you would see claw marks, and I've seen claw marks on trees by bears going out with Peter Byrne. In fact, in the Blue Mountains of Oregon, you can literally see the grooves from the claws. But yeah, you're right. There's been places I've been to where the bark literally looks like it's been pulled off, not ripped off. Yeah. So you're on the right track.
But and also to mention, you were talking about the swaying, the 3 Bigfoot that were swaying in the in the quarry where they were doing the blasting by you. When I was in Canada, I could have sworn that the figure that I saw about almost 70 to 80 yards away, it was a dark black silhouette. And it was huge, and it filled up the whole of a wood line. And we were kind of like in a marshy bog area, and the wood line was about 80 yards from us, 60 to 80 yards from us. And this thing standing in a woods line, it was almost like a hollowed out tunnel that you could walk through. Well, this thing filled the whole damn hollowed out tunnel, and it almost looked like it swayed back and forth a couple times. And when it took off, you could feel the ground pounding. And me and my brother just looked at each other and were like, "That's not no moose. That's not a bear." Because you could feel the ground like it was almost like a 2-step vibration. You could just feel that trampling. And as we left that area, we didn't leave right away. We left a couple minutes later after we kind of felt like it's time to get out of here.
Right.
We were being flanked by something in those woods, and if it wasn't for the hunting guide to pick us up in the Suburban when we're out on the main road, or the logging road, we probably would have been someone's supper that night, and I wouldn't be here talking about it. So,
well, it's funny you should mention that, because when we initially got on Village Island, we took it one Zodiac over there. We had myself, Tom, Seawood, Tom Steinberg, and Victoria, one of our videographers, and we pulled up on the beach and literally pulled the inflatable up onto the beach, and we weren't there but maybe a minute when we heard the loudest thud. Made no sense at all. I mean, you could, like you said, you could literally feel the ground vibrate, and you could see it, because I know when Victoria was photographing, and we looked at it later when we got back, the footage when we got back to the Clattawa. You could see the expression on everybody's face. They were all looking at each other like either a log or a tree got slammed to the ground, or something picked up a large boulder and slammed it to the ground. But I mean, you could feel it. And there were some other crazy things that went on too. For instance, just out of the blue, Victoria felt very uncomfortable. And I'm not into this whole, paranormal stuff.
The woo. Everyone calls it the woo factor. The woo.
It is the woo factor. Yeah.
There's a paranormal factor to this, because some things just don't add up. That's what I've found out. So,
well, you know what? You can talk about paranormal. Keyword is normal. You can talk about pseudoscience, whatever. I keep finding myself eating crow from time to time, where I've written something off as being some woo-woo factor thing, and then suddenly I experience it. And this is kind of where I'm going with this particular landing we did. Victoria got very nervous about nothing that we could understand. She just wanted to get off the island. I said, well, let me set up a seismic ground sensor and let Tom and I put up a couple cameras, and we'll get out of here. Well, she's filming me putting in the seismic ground sensor, which measures vibration in the ground. And then a little bit later, put up these cameras. We get out to the beach, and Tom Seawood had the VHF radio, which can reach out line of sight like 10 miles. We're like 200 yards from the mothership, the Clattawa, our main base. And he's trying to radio them to let the captain know we're on our way in. And radio doesn't work.
Oh, wow.
The other thing is, When we got back to the Clottawa, Victoria put her SD RAM chip into the computer, and we kind of watched what we just filmed. What was really weird was we got to this point where she's filming me putting in these ground sensors. All of a sudden, the audio completely goes out and is replaced by this high-pitched squealing sound. And I'm like, okay, has that ever happened before? No. And so then I said, you know what? These seismic ground sensors, they'll put off. I mean, they transmit up to 2 miles line of sight a silent signal to let you know that particular sensor's picking up some vibration in the ground. I said, maybe when I switched that on, it's transmitting. Maybe it just interfered with the camera. We went back and looked, and I hadn't even switched it on yet. So we don't know. It's never happened before or since, but just right in the middle of her filming, all the audio goes off and is replaced by this high pitched squealing. You can ask Tom. You can ask Tom about it. It was pretty peculiar.
Wild.
And I've had stuff like that happen before. And again, I'm not of the woo factor, but I've had other electronic equipment. In one case, about 5 different pieces of electronic equipment that I knew were fully charged just stopped working. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And
you got the orbs that pop up too. I mean, I was using my night vision. I had a monocular a couple months ago. I was using it in my property. My wife said she saw a huge ape when she was using it, and I'm like, no way. So I grab it from her. I go, I don't see nothing. She goes, I swear I saw a huge ape. I grabbed the night vision. I put the SD card in, hit record, try to see something. Went to go use the next day, it wouldn't turn on. It was I don't know if it got hit by infrasound or what, but it would not work. It couldn't turn on. I sent it to my tech buddy. He couldn't get it to work, so I wanted to buy a new one, and I've been using that one since, and everything's good so far. But I still haven't seen what my wife saw. So maybe she has more of a better frequency to pick up on these things. Maybe she's more in tune with her psyche, because I mean, or maybe because she's a female, these things more allow females to see them. I don't know the whole answer to that whole theory, but all I know is she saw it and I didn't, and it was right on my property, and I missed it. But it is what it is.
You know, Tom, as long as we're going off on the lunatic fringe, and I've already said more than I should, but I was invited last year about this time out to the Omaha reservation in Nebraska. Mm-hmm. I'd been in touch with a friend of mine. We made friends on Facebook, and we'd been talking for like 2.5 years at this point. And he says, you got to come out here. Now, what I'd seen, or what he had said, was Bigfoot related, were videos taken at night. And there was this this particular factor that, again, I had put out there as just paranormal, but it's what a lot of people refer to as eye shine, and it didn't make sense to me. I can't, when anybody says Bigfoot does this or that, or has these particular characteristics, well, first thing I do is try to compare it to any other animal or any other species for that matter. Where's there another example of that? And there wasn't. And so, what they're talking about is bioluminescence. We're not talking about reflection from a flashlight or a flash camera, because we know humans, we can get red eye with the old camera, and so it wasn't reflection based. It was literally generated from the creatures. And I'm thinking, okay, if I have really good night vision, the best way for me to ruin that is to like shine a light in my eyes. It's just didn't make sense that would be effective. But I will tell you this: I flew in on a Saturday in November. No, I think it was October actually. And I really didn't expect to go out in the field, but we did. And we went out 5 nights in a row, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then I had to take off on Saturday. He would take me out to this very remote area along the Missouri River where there were these rolling hills that had hardwoods and, oak and maple and whatnot, and pretty thick, and we would be on this little 2-lane road, shut the lights off, shut everything off. You couldn't see the hand in front of your face. And we're talking from like midnight till 2 a.m, right? So he would go out there to the fog line on the road and yell out in the distance in his native tongue, "Oho, Kage," which means hello, friend. Mm-hmm. And I swear to God, Tom, within 15 to 20, 25 seconds, whatever, all of a sudden I'd see these eyes light up about, maybe 100, 120 feet away. And I'm like, no way. At times we would see 2 sets, even 3 sets of these, what appeared to be eyes emitting light. And I don't mean projecting light. I've been trying to wrap my head around this since the day I saw it. And we saw this every night in 2 different locations. Mm-hmm. I recently had a documentary team go over there maybe 2 weeks ago and said, "You see it for yourself. You tell me, mm-hmm. How this works." And they called me while they were over there. They said, "Holy crap, we're seeing exactly what you said you were seeing, and we're hearing what you said." Because it wasn't just the eye shine. There were vocalizations that accompanied it. Which were amazing vocalizations in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, in the middle of nowhere. It was like, I honestly have to say, in my 28 plus years of research, that it really, aside from my visual sighting I had in '93, stands out as a highlight of my research. And but what I'm telling you is these what appeared to be sets of eyes would blink. You could see when they blinked. They would move left to right. Sometimes they would come closer. Sometimes they would back off. They would shift to the left, to the right. He would say, "Gigaho," which means come closer. He's established a relationship with these things. And he is still to this day having people out there and showing them this stuff.
Yeah, he called it Sasquatch Island, I think, because he takes his little boat ride out there and takes little.
No, you're thinking of See What I Think.
Okay,
yeah. No, this gentleman's name. I don't think he'd have a problem with me mentioning it. But his name is Barry Webster, and him and his brother Derek, they live on the reservation, and they have collectively for easily more than 3 years now seen and experienced and have taken a number of people out there to experience this. The only thing I could think of, so if you've ever worn night vision, and I've done a lot in the military, if one person with night vision looks at another with night vision, as opposed to not having night vision. If you look at somebody with night vision, you wouldn't see anything. But if you have night vision on and you're looking at somebody else with night vision, you will see a dull glow. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to see, and what you're seeing is the receptors with the night vision scope. These cells are attracting everything from starlight to moon or lunar light to any sort of light, and they amplify it. Again, without looking at it with another scope, you wouldn't see it, but you do see that. Now, is that night vision projecting light? No, it's absorbing light and through specialized circuitry is able to enhance the picture that the wearer is using. And I think that's, I'm guessing at this point, but I think that's what we were seeing. Is there are some receptor cells, I believe, in the back in the retina of these creatures that are super sensitive to absorbing light. Again, I don't think they project light because again that would defeat their own night vision. But they're pulling in light, if you will, and to the extent that it's visible to the human eye. And I've got video of it. I know several people have. We were never disappointed. But again, this is one of these things I told you I just wrote off to, that's part of the woo. There's no way they can do that, but I've seen it. I cannot have seen it, and I hope in time I can find some scientific reason for what we saw and what this documentary team witnessed. And there's some people there actually right as we speak that are out there that I know of checking this out. One particular night, we didn't get a lot of activity. And so my friend said to me, Barry says to me, he says, I'm going to try something. I haven't done this before in a long time, but sometimes I get a response. I go, what? He goes, I'm going to pray with them. I'm going to pray for them. And I'm going to invite them to join us. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so he calls out the Hokage. He says, I want to pray with you. I want to pray for you and your family, for your safety and your happiness and your health, to the Creator. And if you would like to come close, please come forward and join us. I didn't know what to think. I'm like, okay.
You know what? A lot of natives consider them another tribe. So it makes perfect sense. They consider them another tribe. The tribe that never really came to terms with other humans. They stay away from everybody. They're like the lost tribe. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense that he would talk to them like that because I've heard that many times.
Oh, and we need to get back to that. Circle back, as Jan would say.
I'll come back to that question.
Yeah. So we bowed our heads, and he started, saying this prayer. The prayer was probably 3 minutes long, but about halfway into it, maybe the 90-second mark, from very close range. And again, we just have our heads bowed, and he's doing this prayer. We hear, and it did this 4 times in like 10 seconds, and it was like maybe 50 feet away. And I'm like trying to keep my head down because we're praying, and I don't know if I wanted to look up, but it was coming from out of the dark and very close range. He finally says, amen. I said, hey, brother, was that them? And he goes, yep. He said, I told you. He said, I told you sometimes this works. And it wasn't just that. I mean, the first night we got there, we had what I assume was a female basically serenade us, if you will. I have never heard anything like this, but I say female just because of the high pitch that she put off. And she was fairly distant from us, but extremely loud just the same. She sang these this little chorus that was maybe 5 or 6 seconds long. And it would, in 5 or 6 seconds, it would change in volume, pitch, notes, the duration of each note a little bit. It was like, I'd never heard anything like it. And then there'd be like a 10-second pause, and then she'd do it all over again.
Really?
And she did that. That was Monday night. She did that 4 times in, I'd say, a minute. But each and every time she repeated the same thing. And it's like I tell people, and she did 3 nights later, she did the same thing, but she only did that little verse once. But it was exactly exactly the same notes, pitch, volume. She just did it once, just kind of like a hello, still here.
I got a quick question for you.
Sure. Yeah,
Can you
please.
see it? Can you ever see it down there?
I can't.
It says, "Have you ever seen one cloak?"
Cloak? No.
No, you've never seen like the cloaking that people talk about.
So, so here's something that I have to say about that. I have a lot of friends that are, and again, I'll probably end up eating my words. I put that again, the whole cloaking thing and the woo woo factor. No offense to your listeners, but I look for reasons why. Because if it was one person, that's one thing. But I've heard it numerous times from numerous people and people who are friends of mine. So there's always a bit of truth in everything that's said, and especially when it's repeatedly said. Um, so I try to find reasons why, like for instance, this eye shine thing. I try to find reasons why people are seeing, they're experiencing. I don't doubt them at all. They're seeing something, and then it's not there. So, is there a scientific reason that we can find that might explain what they're seeing, and then obviously unseeing, where it appears that these things disappear? In fact, some of the research I've done in Native American culture, they say the same thing. So, I mean, they'll say Bigfoot will turn into a bush or turn into a tree. You know, I don't think that's the case, but you know, in my trying to reconcile what people are experiencing, I have done some experimentation. I've got a couple different concepts I'm working on. What I think's going on in those situations is that I think this species, I hate to call them creatures or beings or animals, and again, going back to what you said, I think they are a an ancient tribe of human, or not, if not human, at least hominid. But could it be that there are certain traits they have that we've grown out of, but they continue to have? So, one of the things I've looked at is it possible that they have some sort of camouflage, some natural camouflage, a very unique, uh, un, uncommon camouflage that if they stand still, it makes it appear that they're not there. And one of the things I've done uh, is, because based on some microscopic hair samples I've looked at, um, supposedly Bigfoot, I've seen certain characteristics that struck me. Now, mind you, we're talking about hair on a clump of hair on a slide, backlit by white light, magnified. Some of these hair samples I've seen appear to have a certain percentage of the hair appear to be translucent.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, clear, with no discernible cortex, um, which made me think, if an animal has a coat of hair where, say, 30% of it are hollow, see-through, transparent hairs, would they not act somewhat like this?
Yeah,
This is fiber optics.
fiber. I was just gonna say fiber optics. You can
Okay.
make it any color you want by bending light, changing
And
the
you know
light.
what? And you know what fiber optics does? I've bought 1,000 feet of this stuff to experiment with. Fiber optics. Now, can you see me? See my eye right there? Can you see that through there? No.
No, you can't.
Because what's happening is it's picking up this overhead light and it's transmitting it through the fiber. And likewise, if they have a certain percentage of their hair coat with this clear, again, clear translucent hair shafts, would they not, like fiber optics, pick up the not just the surrounding color but the ambient light in that place? And if they do, and they're not moving, they would blend in, because basically their hair coat is replicating the light and the colors around them.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
I'm working with a taxidermist. I want to get a section of bear hide, something I think somewhat similar to what these things have, and start infusing these fiber optic hairs, if you will, into the coat. Take pictures before with just the bear hide in certain locations under certain lighting scenarios.
Certain light, certain green shade with trees, and that's why people sometimes they say they look green because it's blending in with the green foliage of a tree. So I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's
kind of
crazy.
like that old Predator movie thing,
Exactly. That's why they call it cloaking. That's like one of the reasons they all compare it to Predator, but there's a term for everything. That's just kind of what that's kind of what it kind of brought out about it. So yeah.
Well, it's just a theory, but
Yeah.
and then if I can take pictures of the hide as it is, and then make sure that the lighting in the same area with the infused fiber optics into it, we'll see if it makes a difference. But my gut tells me it will.
And the funny thing is, fiber optics is alien technology. How crazy! So, if alien technology is fiber optics, and the light bends their hair, their fur. So, what is that? Is that is someone trying to tell us something that they're part alien too? Hybrids, just a thought. I can't prove it. Don't have one to study in my basement like some people say on other podcasts. I've heard that before, but I don't have one to study in my basement, so I can't really make that discernment, that factual, all speculation.
I think it's incumbent upon all of us to take everything into consideration, but at the same time, take those experiences and try to apply technology to them, to where maybe we can explain this quote unquote cloaking thing.
Yeah.
And maybe simplify it into just something as simple as they have hollow hair shafts embedded in their fur, and that those hair shafts will absorb the light and colors around them.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Idea. I mean,
just a basic experiment to see what works and what doesn't.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole eye shine thing, but I tell you, I will get to the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah.
Later on my show. Does anybody have any questions for Todd? I was going to ask you, how did your documentary? You're doing another one similar to the Sea Monkey Operation Sea Monkey, or no? Are you going to do another one in the future? You plan on?
Oh yeah, I'm actually working on about 3 documentaries currently. Actually, one's already in the can. Should come out in January. Done by Jill Rensmere and Brett Eichenberger. They just wrapped it up. In fact, these are the 2 documentary and people that went out to the Omaha reservation 2 weeks ago. So they're putting that all together. That should come out in December. Some of your audience might recall that I was on the History Channel with William Shatner back in February on the Unexplained. They've asked me to come back and be on a documentary with Lawrence Fishburne called History's Greatest Mysteries. So we'll see if that comes up. I'm working with Doug Hadjasek, who did.
He's Monster Quest producer. He's a producer for Monster Quest. All those.
Monster Quest and Sasquatch Legend Meets Science, and so he's coming out with.
He's got some really good technology I've seen him putting on Facebook lately, and I mean the stuff he's got state of the art tech to really catch something good. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
That guy is a renaissance man. He's not only a producer and director, editor, writer, but he's an inventor. And a lot of people may not know that. bear with me. I'm looking for a way to plug my phone in because it's getting a little on the weak side here. But anyway, so he he's doing Legend Meet Science 2, and I'll be working with him on that. In fact, I'm flying down to Las Vegas this next month to meet with him in person, and
Right.
we'll talk about that a little bit more.
Wasn't the first Legend of Meat Science where they had that guy in a suit and he was running across like that little canyon and they were able to dissipate how fast the runner was running opposed to the actual speed that the Squatch was running? They had to say that it couldn't have been a man because it ran too fast.
Yeah,
And even like a world record runner couldn't run that quick up that.
that was what they called the Memorial Day footage, and so it was. And they Jeff Meldrum was a part of that. They went up to Canada, flew in by a float plane to a remote cabin, and collected some DNA there as well. But no, Doug is amazing. He's just he's like I say, he's a Renaissance man. He I don't know where he finds enough time in the day. He's like 10 people in one, but I'm
Nice.
looking forward to working with him. And then I've been approached by a Canadian show out of Ontario, and I don't know. I think they're talking about maybe doing a TV series.
Nice.
So we're just kind of fleshing out the details on that. So
nothing wrong with that. One day, my plan is to stay where I'm at. I'm a small channel growing here and there, just not really trying to get, shovel fed. I'm the spoon fed guy. So I'm gradually growing here and there, and I'm good with that. I'm not trying to be the top dog on the shelf because I'd rather just, do what I love and have fun doing it and not worry about numbers. And that's what it's all about, And I was very humbled to have you come on tonight because I wasn't expecting to get you as a guest is all, I appreciate you coming on. Seriously. Thanks again. That was very nice of you to come do this with me. So
no, the honor's mine. Thank you.
You're a well-known researcher and you've got you got a lot of time and stuff going on, and you gave me some of your time. So it's an honor to have your time tonight. Seriously. And yeah.
Well, let's do it again sometime, huh?
I'm looking forward to it. Whenever you're not filming or running around the woods chasing squash, I'll be glad to have you on again. And maybe our hookup time will be a little quicker now. We'll just use Messenger instead of email.
I'll work the bugs out. I think they're on my end, but thank you for your patience, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, no problem. Well, everybody have a great night, and thank you, Todd, for coming on. It was a pleasure. If you want to hang out in the backstage, we'll have our little farewell, and I'm going to end this broadcast now. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming on.
Good night.